Rain skittered like spilled pearls over the stained-glass windows of the old stone chapel perched on the cliffside, the sea thrashing below like it was trying to speak. Inside, the air was warm, suffused with candlelight, heavy with peonies and tension. Her dress shimmered when she moved, off-white silk, custom-tailored, the train coiled at her feet like a sleeping swan. Claire stood at the altar, spine stiff as porcelain, veil pinned with ruthless precision, lips trembling with a shade of pink that cost more than some people's monthly rent. Her eyes, pale, almost silver under the chandeliers, kept darting to the heavy oaken doors at the back, like she was waiting for someone she hoped wouldn't come. Beside her, James stood like a statue carved in hesitation. Black suit, navy tie, hair a little too perfect, like he'd combed it twice before breathing. He wasn't trembling, but the silence around him seemed to be. You could feel it. Everyone in the pews felt it. The kind of silence that has teeth. The kind that comes just before something rips. The priest, Father Caleb, stood like he'd done this 1,000 times, but knew this one would be different. His hands were folded, old and veined and calm. But his eyes, they were watching. Not the bride. Not the groom. The empty pew near the front. Second row. Right side. The one meant for family. James's sister, Evie, hadn't come. At least, not yet. She'd been uninvited. Claire's voice had cracked when she told him, 2 nights ago, in that low-lit bistro where the wine never emptied and the waiters wore gloves. "I don't want her there, James." That's all she said at first. He blinked. "Why?" A pause. "She makes things about her. She's chaotic. I don't want her energy on our day." He looked at her across the candle. "She's my sister." Claire's lips had pressed into a line. "And I'm your wife. Or will be." That was the first time he flinched. She saw it. The second time was when she added, "If she comes, I won't walk down the aisle." So now, Evie wasn't there. At least, not yet. But her absence felt like a storm outside the glass. The pews were packed with muted tones, rich friends and nervous relatives, all of them holding programs they pretended to read. The pianist played something soft, repetitive, a melody meant to soothe, but only amplifying the silence. A baby whimpered somewhere. A cough. Claire's mother, Margot, watched from the front with a face like a tight-laced corset, both proud and smug. She had backed the decision. "It's your wedding," she'd said. "You have the right to decide who's allowed." And yet Claire's knuckles were pale against her bouquet. James hadn't spoken much since that night. His silences had lengthened, calcified. Claire tried to ignore it, tried to tell herself he'd chosen her. But something about the way he looked at the empty pew now, like it was a grave, made her stomach twist beneath the satin. Then the doors creaked open. It wasn't loud, but it sliced the air. Every head turned. There she stood, Evie. Umbrella dripping, hair wild with salt and wind, eyes dark with sleeplessness. She wore a black coat over a faded navy dress, the kind that didn't belong here, not in this polished place. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She just looked. At James. Then Claire. Then the priest. Claire's breath hitched. Her hand on the bouquet tightened until the stems creaked. Margot leaned toward the aisle like a hawk spotting prey. "She wasn't invited," she whispered, loud enough for everyone to hear. Evie stepped forward. 1, 2, just enough to reach the aisle. She didn't speak. Her eyes found her brother. She smiled. Not the warm kind. the kind that hides 100 things unsaid. James took half a step forward. Claire reached out, caught his wrist. "Don't," she hissed, just loud enough. The priest cleared his throat. It echoed in the chamber. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped down from the altar. Calm. Measured. Each step deliberate. The murmur stopped. The pianist's hands froze on the keys. He walked straight to Evie. Took her hand, not roughly, not kindly. Just real. Looked into her face. Then turned to the congregation. "Before we begin," he said, voice quiet but resonant, "I'd like to say something." James felt it first. That something was about to crack open. Claire didn't breathe. "Weddings," the priest began, "are built on stories. The story of how two people met, fell in love, chose each other. But there's another story behind the flowers, behind the music, behind every guest sitting here. It's the story of how it all came to be." People shifted, whispered. He turned, now facing the bride and groom. "Before I joined the priesthood, I was an accountant." A few chuckles. Nervous. He smiled, but it was thin. "Old habits die hard. I always read the invoices. I always ask who paid for what." Claire blinked. Slowly. Like her body knew what was coming before her mind could catch up. James stared at the priest. "This wedding," Father Caleb continued, "was not paid for by Claire's parents." Margot froze. As if someone had thrown a switch. Claire looked at her mother. Then back at the priest. "Not entirely," he added. "Oh, they covered some things. The dress, the invitations. But the venue? The catering? The donation to this church? The rings?" He paused. The air thickened. "Paid in full. By Evelyn Morgan." The silence exploded. Claire's mouth opened. No sound. James whispered, "What?" But he already knew. Somewhere, deep down, he knew. Evie met his eyes and gave the faintest nod. The priest stepped back. "I wasn't going to say anything, but when someone is banned from their own family's joy after giving so much in silence, I think truth matters." Claire dropped the bouquet. It hit the marble like a gunshot. The petals scattered. Red. White. Bleeding across the floor. James turned to her. "You knew," he said. His voice raw. Not loud. Just naked. Claire shook her head, but too slowly. Too uncertainly. I thought it was from your family's estate." "No," Evie said. Her first word. Her voice shook, but it held. "It was from me. From the accident money. From Liam." And now you could hear it. That name. That ghost. James staggered back like he'd been punched. Claire reached for him. "I didn't know," she whispered again. But the words felt hollow. Even to her. Because she had known. Somewhere in her. The way people know when they're pretending. Edie didn't move. Didn't cry. Just stood, like someone who'd bled too long to notice. The priest looked at them all. Then stepped back up to the altar. "So, before we begin, I ask again, are we all sure?" James looked at his sister. His bride. The pews around him. The rain tapping the windows like a warning. And for the first time in hours, the groom spoke. "No," he said. "We're not." The silence didn't hold long. It never does, not in rooms packed with people who thought they understood the story they were sitting inside. It cracked into whispers, then coughs, then the first rising voice, Margot, of course, her face paling beneath the lacquered confidence, trying to reassert control like a hand clawing back a falling curtain. This is outrageous. She wasn't even supposed to be here, and now we're talking about, what? Money? On a sacred day? Her voice pitched upward, shrill and desperate, but no one looked at her now. Not really. All eyes were on James. He stood there like the room had suddenly caught fire, and he was trying to decide whether to run or let it burn. Evie still hadn't moved. She stood just inside the doorway, wet footprints darkening the aisle behind her like bruises on a white sheet. The wind pushed against the doors behind her like it wanted in. Claire's lips were trembling. Her dress, flawless moments ago, now seemed to swallow her, as though it no longer belonged on her body. James, she said softly, desperately. You can't let this ruin what we have. He turned. Slowly. Not with rage. With something colder. Older. A kind of hurt that had marinated too long in silence. What do we have? He asked, voice low. If you could cut out the person who's been there for me since I could walk, just because she doesn't fit your picture. Claire's jaw moved, but no sound came out. It was my day, she whispered eventually, as if that justified everything. Your day, James repeated, blinking like the phrase was foreign. He stepped back from the altar. His shoes echoed. 1, 2, 3 steps. People leaned forward in their seats. The pianist still hadn't moved. Time had suspended itself in the vaulted ceiling. You think I wanted her to pay for this? He asked. You think I'd let her, after what she's been through? Evie's hands clenched at her sides, and now the hurt showed, just a flicker behind her eyes, like headlights passing in a storm. Claire's voice rose, her fear bleeding through. How was I supposed to know? You never told me. Because it wasn't your business, James snapped, louder than anyone expected. She gave me the money after Liam died. Said, use it when you need to remember what love looks like. His eyes locked on his sister. I thought this day was that. Evie looked away, as if the grief was too direct to look at head-on. Claire stepped forward now, voice tightening. You don't understand what it's like to plan a wedding. Every detail, the pressure, your sister's always had this chaos around her. I needed control. I needed peace. James stared at her. So you cut her out. She gave you this day, and you erased her from it. The priest watched silently from above, hands clasped again, like waiting for lightning to strike. In the second pew, an older man in a gray suit muttered, Jesus, and his wife elbowed him into silence. The room had turned. Not with pitchforks, not yet. But with that uneasy stillness people wear when they realize they were witnesses to something cruel and hadn't seen it. Claire's breath came faster now, her dress rising with every heave. She always makes herself the center of everything. I didn't want her drama. You always said no. James interrupted. I said she was struggling. That she lost someone she couldn't replace. That she was the only one who showed up when I was drinking myself to death after Dad died. You think you saved me? You think it was your spa weekends and wedding binders? A flicker of shame passed over Claire's face like a passing shadow. I didn't know it was her money, she said again, but it was losing power now. The lie wasn't that she didn't know, it was that she hadn't asked. She hadn't wanted to. James turned back to Evie. She still stood just inside the doors, unmoving, uncertain if this was the part where she was supposed to leave again. You should sit down, he said quietly. She flinched. Are you sure? Her voice cracked on the last word. James nodded. You should have always been there. Claire took a sharp breath. If she sits, I won't stay. The words hit like a slap. Murmurs rose again. Margot hissed something to a man beside her, probably a lawyer or her second husband, but no one heard. All ears were waiting for James. And for the first time, he looked free. Not calm, not certain, but unshackled. The kind of freedom that comes when someone you loved shows you their face, and you finally stop pretending it's someone else's. Then don't, he said, not angry. Just done. Claire stood frozen. The veil trembled like it was trying to flee from her head. Outside, thunder rolled in slow, like applause from God or warning. Evie walked down the aisle, quiet, unsure, tears in her eyes but not falling. She sat where she was supposed to sit all along. Second row. Right side. James walked toward her, then stopped. Turned back to the priest. I need 5 minutes, he said. Maybe more. The priest nodded, solemn, like a man who had seen wars start with less. Claire stood alone now at the altar, surrounded by petals, eyes wide, trapped in the cage she built herself. People turned away. Not cruelly. Just tired of watching someone pretend the mirror was the problem. James didn't walk out of the chapel. Not yet. He just stood beside his sister and leaned down. Why didn't you tell me? She shrugged. Because it wasn't about me. I just wanted you to have a good memory again. Her voice broke now. I didn't know it'd cost this. He sank beside her, both of them silent now. The crowd waited. No one left. Because this was no longer a wedding. It was a reckoning. And every eye in the room was bracing for what came next. The storm outside had found its way inside. And somewhere inside it, justice was circling closer. It was an hour before the guests began to leave, quiet as falling ash, slipping out past the heavy wooden doors like they were walking away from a house that had caught fire, slow, respectful, but needing air. No music played. No cake was cut. The aisle stayed littered with petals that no one swept, and Claire's bouquet still lay in pieces where it had fallen. The stems snapped, the blossoms wilting as fast as breath in winter. Claire had gone. No scene, no last speech, just walked, veil in hand, through the vestry door and into a silence no one followed her into. Margot left after her, muttering sharp words to no one who listened. James stayed. Evie too. They sat in the same pew, like they were afraid to stand in case it meant the moment would break. The rain had stopped, but the chapel still smelled of storm and old wood and something more human, grief maybe, or truth. James didn't say much. He didn't need to. The space between him and his sister had changed. It was quieter now, cleared of debris. The kind of silence that follows after someone tells the truth that was always there, just waiting to be spoken. Evie rested her hands in her lap, still trembling a little, but she was breathing fully now, her chest not locked the way it used to be. She'll hate me forever, she said, voice low, looking at the altar like it still haunted her. Maybe, James replied, but that's her path, not yours. A beat. You saved me. You know that, right? She nodded barely. But she didn't cry. She'd done all her crying before she walked through those doors. I just wanted to see you happy. Maybe this is part of it, James said. Not the wedding. Just this. Being real again. The priest came back eventually, and they spoke quietly. There wouldn't be a ceremony today. No legal knots tied. James would call the florist, the caterers. He didn't ask for refunds. He just paid what he owed. The money didn't matter anymore. The truth had already been paid for. He walked Evie to her car under a sky bruised with the last of the storm. Clouds stretched thin like worn cloth. Her coat was still damp. Her shoes were ruined. She didn't care. "You'll be okay?" he asked. She smiled, crooked, small. "Real." "I think I already am." They didn't hug. Not the big, cinematic kind. Just a quiet touch on the arm, his fingers resting there a moment longer than they used to, like they both understood the time lost couldn't be undone, but it didn't have to stay lost. James didn't go home that night. He walked through the city, then down by the coast, where the chapel lights still flickered behind the stained glass. He found a bench near the edge of the cliff. The sea below breathed in and out, relentless, like it always had. Like it always would. He took the ring out of his pocket. Simple. Silver. Still warm. He didn't throw it. Just held it there in his hand, the way you hold something that once meant everything, and now means something else entirely. He sat there until the sun broke the horizon, thin and gold, like a promise no one had to make. Not a new beginning. Just a clean breath. The gulls cried overhead. The waves didn't care. And the petals back in the chapel, somewhere behind him, kept on wilting in the quiet.